everyone. Welcome to the Made It in Music podcast. I'm Riley Taylor, our community manager here at Full Circle Music, and I'm so excited for you to hear this upcoming episode because today I sat down with Seth Mosley, Sam Tinnesz, and Paul Duncan to discuss what they don't tell you about the music industry. Sam is a gold-selling artist with hundreds of millions of streams on Spotify and multiple film and TV placements. Paul is a songwriter, worship leader, and frequent collaborator with many of Christian music's top artists. This was recorded along with our live online audience from our Song Chasers community. You can learn more about Song Chasers at joinsongchasers.com. For now, let's dive into the episode.
Hey, happy Friday. I told you that we would have a surprise guest earlier. I was hoping to have a sheet or something and then drop it. But here he is. It's Sam Tinnesz.
What's going on?
The man, the myth, the legend. We've got the Riley Taylor, who you know, and then we've also got my buddy all the way from sunny Los Angeles, California. Woo! Mr. Paul Duncan. How you doing, my friend Paul?
Pretty good. Not as sunny as you might think, but I'm doing well.
It's always sunny in LA, man.
You can believe it or not, it's actually cloudy today. It's the first time ever.
Wow.
Happening.
Well, even the LA cloudy, it still feels good out there, though. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, it's like the clouds at least refract off of the In-N-Out burger, and it just feels better. So
that sounds delicious.
Yeah. So today's all about, and our whole month in Song Chasers is all about what they don't tell you about the music industry. And I wanted to bring a couple friends of mine on. I work with Sam all the time on stuff. He's been killing it up and down the music industry as a songwriter, as a producer, as a talent developer, and also as an artist. And then I also wanted to bring my friend Paul on, who's had a whole host of experience in the industry as a songwriter, having cuts with Lauren Daigle and Jordan Feliz. And then also he has his own podcast called Songcraft, which you should definitely check out. He's had Vince Gill, Smokey Robinson, Elvis Costello, Steve Perry, Linda Perry, and all of the other Perrys. Have you had Tyler Perry?
Not yet, but we're working on it.
Well,
the character as Medea.
And so we're going to be jumping into all things, what they don't tell you about the music industry, because it is kind of a black box. It's never what you think it is on the front end. So maybe before we jump in, I'd love for maybe we can start with Paul. Just share a little bit of your story, just to give our folks, our beautiful folks in Song Chasers, a little bit of background on you. Who is Paul Duncan? How did he get into the music industry and get to where he is today? I don't know why I'm talking about you in third person, but
I'm going to do the same. It's a long, I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, but, grew up playing music and writing songs, and always kind of envisioned myself as being an artist when I was coming up, and started my own band in college, kind of like a 2-man acoustic thing, and in the 90s, and then moved out to California, and we were we're going to tour around, and we did that for about 3 years. We toured around with our own self-funded albums that we'd made, played some churches and colleges and coffee houses, and whoever would have us. And then that band split up, as it kind of, those things tend to happen. And I found myself living in LA with a guitar, and just trying to figure out, how could I still make music? How could I still make that my thing? So there was the period of yes for me. I said yes to everything. And I was to a certain place, I was maybe leading worship at a camp, or I was backing up a band playing with somebody, or I was learning Pro Tools and trying to do a little, independent recording for somebody that needed something done, just trying to scrape together, $100 here, or whatever I could, just to kind of keep the lights on playing music. And I think in the early 2000s, around 2003 or 4, had my first invitation to participate in a writing session, a co-write. And it was with an older writer named Al Kasha, who had written some songs in the 60s and 70s. And he turned out to be a mentor for me. And through him, I got my first song ever cut, which was a country song back in the early 2000s. And that sort of really gave me the bug of wanting to write more, and wanting to figure out how that all worked. I was super green. I didn't understand how that process worked. I just got kind of thrown into it. And a lot of trial and error after that first song got cut. Then I went through probably 5 or 6 more years when nothing happened. And I was trying to fund my own trips to Nashville and trying to meet as many people as I could. And in that process began to meet some folks that were in the Christian industry. And it was, I think that first country song that got recorded was, like I said, I think it was 2003. And I think in 2010 was the next time I had anybody record one of my songs. So I would say that my story is mostly marked by periods of difficulty and a lot more no's than yeses. And I would say most of my lessons and most of the things I learned about how to write and how to deal with people all came through kind of the more of the desert years than what I would call the years where things went well. So
man, thanks for sharing your story. There's a lot in that, and I want to dive into a few things. Before we do that, Sam Tinnesz. Many of y'all met Sam at boot camp, but for those of y'all who did not, maybe give everybody the quick synopsis of your story and how you got to where you are. You've been just sort of dominating it in the industry lately, but I know it was a journey to get there.
Yeah, I was in a contemporary Christian band called Mike's Chair early on, and then we made a couple records, signed to Curb, and then I decided I wanted to just do writing and stay at home. And so I started writing for a bunch of contemporary Christian artists like Mandisa, Newsboys, and all sorts of folks. And but I still felt like there was something missing from what I had to show of what I was writing. And I met these two guys, Josh and Zach Farrow, who were in a band called Paramore, and we started making a record, and everything during that process went wrong. We made the record, but at the end, I put all the money I had in my savings into this record, and it all fell apart. They decided to do other things. I was doing other things. And I met this girl named Maggie Eckford through that process, though. And now she's known as Ruelle. And by pulling in my friend Matt and kind of helping develop that, we were a part of the beginnings of the whole thing with her. And kind of it dominated the TV and film space from 2018 on. She was the #1 most synced artist, according to Billboard, above Imagine Dragons and Snow Patrol and Billie Eilish. And then I started doing my own music in that same space and did really well with that, and had a couple songs that went viral on TikTok, like a song called Legends Are Made, and then another song called Play With Fire. And then kind of been transitioning into writing a bunch of rock stuff for a bunch of rock artists, old and new. So like bands like Sum 41 and an older band called Filter and Dashboard Confessional and a few other things. So we just kind of been diving into that. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. I love doing the artist stuff, but I also love writing for others and helping produce their records. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
It's awesome. Thanks, Sam. One of the main points that I wanted to hit on today, and Paul, you hinted at it in your story earlier, is that one big thing that they don't tell you about the music industry, contrary to what people see on American Idol and The Voice and America's Got Talent and how many any other shows there are, people think it's an overnight success thing. Like everyone looks and they see, oh, they blew up overnight. They blew up out of nowhere. But rarely is there such a thing as overnight success. It takes a long time in the music business. So maybe talk a little bit about that, Paul. Did you expect it to be one way when you came in? And then when you hit that kind of 7-year desert season, as you called it, how did you get through that?
I think, I kind of have this theory that all of us that write songs and that want people to hear them, there's this part of us that some part in your brain says people need to hear what I'm doing. And, that can be the thing that keeps you awake at night. That can be the thing that drives you crazy. It can feel delusional, but it's kind of the fire. It was the fire that sort of kept me going. And sometimes I look back at these long periods of, where nothing was happening. What was it that kept me going? And I think it was that feeling. And for me, it was, I think I did think that it was going to be easier. I think, particularly when I was younger, you go to, in your high school, maybe the one guy who's writing songs at your high school and everybody wants to hear it. Oh, you're great. You go to college and kind of the same kind of thing. And then you leave and you realize that the world is a giant pond and you're a tiny fish. And So I certainly thought that it would be easier. In the end, I'm glad that it wasn't, because I feel like there was a lot of experience that was forged in those times. I feel like my ability to write was really made by those times, just having to understand, why was this turned down? Why didn't this work? And you have to go back to the drawing board. And to me, going back to the drawing board time and time again was what actually began to build some real craft in what I was doing, beyond the inspiration, and taking it to a craft.
That's so good. Do you relate to that at all? What
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, my first band that I was with, we had signed a record deal out of college thinking, oh my gosh, we made it. This is it. Like, not realizing that it was just the beginning of the journey. And, I was telling my wife at the time, we were just getting married. I'm like, right when we get married, after we're out of college, like, I'm going to be on the road constantly, and we're going to put out this record. I'm going to be really busy. So just be ready for that. And it took another 2 years after we signed our record deal to even do anything. And it was just a really hard process to even make a record that was worthy of releasing, and even to get the record label to let us release anything. So that whole process was really heartbreaking in some ways, but in other ways, it just made you work as hard as possible to write the best songs possible. And it was a really not what it looked like in the movies kind of experience.
So, I mean, for both of you guys, like, what was it that kind of kept you going through it? I mean, were there days that you felt like giving up on it and throwing in the towel?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it was different days, different things would keep me going. I kept coming back to this realization that that I didn't really know how to do anything else very well. I think that was something that sort of kept me going. My wife was incredibly encouraging the whole time, which really helped too. I think surrounding yourself with people that are going to speak encouragement into what you do, but also do it honestly, because she didn't love every song that I wrote. And she didn't blow me up on songs that she didn't think were great. But I think having her in my corner was honestly really helpful, especially when it came to, I was spending money trying to take these trips. And that's one of the really nuts and bolts parts of it, is that I was making money by doing things like teaching guitar lessons, and then spending it on going to these trips, these kind of dream trips to write songs, when she probably would have preferred that I pay the electric bill with it. But having that support was really helpful.
Yeah. So how did you guys, and you hit on the guitar lessons thing, but like, I was going to ask, how did you guys kind of make that season work financially? Like that's one of the very real realities of it.
Yeah, that was really hard. I feel like I always said, like, you have to do something that is like making your monthly nut, whatever that monthly cost is for you, you have to do that thing, especially like when you have a family and you're like, I can't sacrifice my family's well-being on the altar of music. I just won't do it. So I was like valeting. I was working at an auction shop, like going through dead people's stuff and taking pictures of it and putting it online. Like I was, doing all sorts of weird jobs, buying guitars on Craigslist, selling them on eBay, going from, regional market to global and making a little bit of cash from the buying and selling. I did all sorts of wild things. The funniest thing that ever happened though was when I was working at the symphony doing valet, and my publisher pulled up in his car and I opened up the door and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Dude, you don't pay me enough." Like I'm signed to a record deal, but I got to park cars. Like I got to make money. Wow. So, it was a very humbling season for sure. And if you're a prideful person, you quit right then and there,
Yeah, that's so true. And you hit on something that is really the next point I wanted to hit on is people have this pinnacle in their mind of there's a record deal or there's a publishing deal. And if I can just get that, then everything's going to be okay. But in y'all's experience, and definitely in my experience too, it's not like a magic on and off switch. It's a step in the right direction, hopefully, but it definitely is not the answer to creating a career. Paul, in all those years that you were kind of making those trips back and forth, and that, you talked about like a 7-year season of really not a whole lot happening. you had been with publishers and stuff even all along that. Like, was there an expectation of once you signed a publishing deal that everything would just be like off to the races?
Actually, I actually didn't sign a publishing deal until 2016.
Okay. So you were independent before then.
Totally independent. And I don't know if that sort of helped my mindset or it was a chip on my shoulder for sure. I felt kind of like, man, if nobody knows what I'm doing over here, I'm grinding in the dark. And, and I think it sometimes it made me feel kind of sad that I wasn't getting, that kind of recognition that I thought would help. But it also kind of kept me grinding, I think. But I had to kind of get myself, once I did sign a publishing deal and sort of realize that didn't like solve all my problems, or it didn't, it's not like my phone just started ringing immediately once I signed a publishing deal, to kind of get myself out of an arrival mindset and into a progress mindset. Because we look at certain things as, well, that will feel like an arrival. And then that thing happens and it doesn't feel like you've arrived necessarily. It feels like just another set of starting blocks that you've got to jump from, another set of pressures that you might have to live up to. So beginning to take my life and career in terms of, am I making progress, and measuring progress in my writing, progress in my abilities, widening my relationships, those type of things. Seeing incremental progress was more of an encouragement for me than trying to land on some type of arrival.
Gotcha. And I know in your experience, like obviously you have had multiple record deals and publishing deals over the years, including a record deal with Atlantic Records, and it's not all it's cracked out to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, you're sold this idea that you sign to a record label, they take your music, they blow you up like you're Billie Eilish, and the next day you're famous. And I think for the very, very few people, the 1 in a billion people, that's true. But the rest of us have a long, long, hard road of working hard. I always feel like there's no shortcut in the music industry. So even if you have a record deal, even if you're managed by Maroon 5's manager, even if you're published by Ryan Tedder, even like that will not buy you the way in. Like you literally have to write great songs to then, once you're signed, write great songs again, to prove yourself again. It's just a constant daily proving yourself. And I definitely relate with that whole, like I was unsigned for a long time. And there was a bit of me that wanted validation because of the whole imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. Even when things happen, I'm like, maybe that was a fluke. Maybe it was somebody else in the room. And I think being signed would be like, here's a knighting, you're signed, so you're good. But if you can get by with not needing that and just knowing that you have that talent and that gifting and just moving forward and being confident, not cocky, but confident, I think that serves you well.
For sure. That's so well said. And I can say too, I mean, that honestly, like in all of it, you've really got to take extreme ownership of your own career and not really rely on somebody else to make it for you, just because they won't. Like it just doesn't really work like that. I think people think that, well, if I get a manager or a publisher or an agent or something, they're going to like do it for me. But no, you still got to be, whether you're the songwriter or the artist or the producer, like you're still the CEO of your brand, you're who you are. And they just become a partner behind what you're doing. It maybe used to be the way where you could like manufacture it a little more if you threw enough money at it. But like, I mean, how many stories are there of people just spending immense amount of money with like it's not, you can't really buy your way in. It doesn't so much work like that. So I say all that to say, the indie mentality is a really good thing to have and to keep on your journey through the music industry, because even if you get the good fortune to partner with somebody like a publisher, you've still got to carry that forward. So maybe you can speak a little bit to that, Paul or Sam, for that matter, like just the idea of nobody's going to work as hard as you are for it. I mean, that's definitely been my experience.
Yeah, it's definitely been mine too. I mean, it's great to have people to partner with you, but that's exactly what that is. They're partnering with you And whatever momentum you gained up to that point, getting that publishing deal or making that relationship, I think the expectation on everybody's part is that you're going to continue to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I want to, like, I have a video guy on staff. I've got, my management. I've got my business management. I've got a licensing company that works for me. I can add as many people as I want to my team and feel like, well, maybe this will take less off of me. But at the end of the day, when I go on vacation, I mean, I'm still the quarterback. So people are still texting me going, hey, what should I do about this? Hey, what do you think about that? Or like, if I'm the one who's thinking about marketing ideas. I'm the one who's thinking about how do we release this? I'm the one who's thinking about what do we do next for the next record that I'm going to put out? Who do I need to write with next? What writers do I need to get with? All the strategy that goes behind it. So, I think making sure that you are not looking at someone as a golden goose or a golden ticket to get into this thing is really important, because it's like someone could reach out, your hero could reach out and say, hey, I love what you're doing, and let's get together. And you think, oh my gosh, I made it. This is it. But no matter who it is, they're not going to make your life for you. You still have to work.
Yeah, for sure. And we say all this today, not as a discouragement, but this is why we talk a lot about Rick Barker, and there's a healthy amount of realism that it takes with, it's like you have to be a realist and you have to be realistic, but you also have to have an extreme optimism that, man, no matter what, I'm going to make music because I love making it, regardless of whatever commercial success happens. So I'd love to just speak a little bit to the mindset of like how, whether Paul or Sam, either of y'all can jump into this, but what kind of mindset and how have you been able to cultivate just a spirit of positivity to just keep going and keep going after it? And like, is it just that you just, you love the music part of it so much?
Yes. I mean, to a degree. I mean, I've had this concept of treating music like any relationship in my life, where I try to, I have date night with my wife just to keep that relationship from becoming like a business relationship. And I don't want to have a business relationship with music either. So sometimes I want to just go listen to things that just make me feel good. Mm-hmm. And they're not things that necessarily are going to be like market research or listening to the new records to figure out, what I need to be doing better. But just going back to the records that have always inspired me, because I want to keep that relationship with music. It's sacred to me. And another thing that I think that I try to hold on to is what I call a first audience mentality. And that my first audience is either my co-writer, or if I play a song for my wife or my friends or whomever. And when I live in that small area of trying to move that person with a song and put goosebumps on their arms, and if we can have that together, trying to think about the world and a song that's going to move the world is a little too big for my brain. But if I can keep those moments, those sparks going with just my first audience, and we get excited together, that keeps me going.
That's good. What about you, Sam? What is it that kind of like with all of that, the business side? Because I totally relate to that. That's the attitude that I personally aspire to, is like anytime I can put the business side out of my mind, and that's where it is helpful. You have your business managers, you have your manager. So is team a big part of it for you, or what? How do you?
Yeah, I think for me, like I was telling Seth this today, I was joking with him. I'm like, because we were writing for a big pitch, and I was like, I think it's funny that I still believe that this can happen. I still believe we can sit in a room with nothing, come out with something incredible, pitch it to this out of our league artist, and think in my mind, somewhere I truly believe that it can land. I think keeping that belief and that naivete and that childlike wonder of like, anything can happen, whatever you have to do to change your environment, to keep that kind of childlike wonder, that's what I try to do, whether that's switching people out of my team or making sure I'm not putting too much negative things in my life. Like, I think keeping that kind of like, man, anything can happen. When I feel like anything can happen, then I write some of my best music. And sometimes anything does happen, like the most insane things that you would never believe. And I think I try to hold on to that as much as I can, because it's so easy in this business after getting no, every door closing in your face, to just want to give up, but I think just believing in yourself, not a cocky or an egotistical believing, but going, you know what, I'm confident in what I have to bring. I know I have a great song, or like, man, today was not good, but tomorrow I'm going to write an amazing song,
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Today was good. Today was good. Oh my gosh.
Man, I'm being honest.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I thought we wrote something good.
Not today. Today was great.
No, it's fun. But that, man, you said something really key there. You have a lot of control over your environment.
Yeah.
And your environment influences your mindset and your energy, and that your environment's the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's been the biggest thing. Is if it were just me staying inside my head over all these years, I probably would have quit a long time ago. Yeah. But were it not for the group of friends that I have, and the collaborators and the co-writers and the producer friends, really the community, essentially, and my family, right? You guys both talked about your wives being a big part of it. Yeah. So that's always an option. Sometimes you gotta fire somebody in your inner circle and upgrade your, it sounds harsh, it sounds brutal, it sounds mean, but like sometimes if you want to keep moving forward, you got to surround yourself with people who you want to be like. I mean, do you guys resonate?
Yeah, I mean, it's even like, when you look at the Olympics, it's like something is unachievable until someone does it, and then it seems like the next year 4 other people do it, and they either meet that mark or they surpass it, and it's like something seems impossible until someone around you does it. And I think I've surrounded myself with dreamers and people who are, go after it, and they believe for amazing things, and they see it happen. I go, man, happened for my friend Tommy, like maybe that could happen for me. And I think just having that belief, there's something really wild that I think the world is set up where, like, if you have belief in something, it can happen. So I definitely, and others' belief in you, like, I mean, your mom, it's like your mom is your biggest fan, but at the same time, you need that person who just is like, you're awesome. This is amazing, because you're not going to get that everywhere you go,
Yeah. And lean into, Joelle says Sam should write a book.
Oh my goodness.
There you go. I second that.
Oh goodness.
I would read that.
I don't even read books. No, I'm just
kidding. Yeah, exactly. And Susan says, knowing where your abilities come from.
Yeah.
Chris Hall, exactly. The 4-minute mile. Yeah. Nobody thought that was possible. No. The first person did it. And then all of a sudden,
that happened.
Yeah. And that's what's beautiful about a community like this is this is why we love sharing wins, because it shows that no matter where we come from and what our resources are, we all start at the same starting point, but it is possible.
Well, and
go ahead, Paul.
You're talking about that, that belief in yourself and what you bring. And I think the individuality of what you bring, because I'm seeing like 25 different, Brady Bunch heads here together. And there's nobody has listened to the exact same group of artists that you've listened to in your life. Mm-hmm. The combination of things that have gone into your individual head and heart is your own. Like if you go to Subway, they got these ingredients, right? There's a million ways to make a sandwich at Subway. And there's a million ways to create an artistic mind. And no one has the exact same set of influences that you have. So I look at that as something really individual and divine that, I don't know if anybody likes Pink Floyd and Randy Travis as much as I like both of them, and somehow that soup in my head is coming together to create whatever it is that I am. And each one of you has that.
Yeah. Pink Travis, man.
Pink Travis.
It's a good combo. Paul, I want to dive in a little bit because you've become sort of a wealth of knowledge, a maven of sorts with connecting with all of these different people through your podcast. And first of all, I got to congratulate you on just what an amazing thing you've built there. Everybody who's listening to this or watching this on replay should definitely go subscribe to Songcraft, one of the best songwriting podcasts out there.
Cool.
But you've had, like we said, Smokey Robinson, Elvis Costello, Vince Gill, so many hit songwriters and artists out there. What have been some of the commonalities in their stories as it relates to what we're talking to today?
I mean, a lot of it's you talk about people's biographies and they read like highlight reels. And the thing that I get to do when I'm putting someone's interview together is I look and I say, oh, there was a hit in 1984, but I don't see another one until 1990. And you don't think about that gap until you've got to talk about it. And those gaps that I'm talking about in my own life, man, how encouraging to me to find out that a writer at Motown went through the same thing, or that, Pooh Bear, who writes with Justin Bieber, or, Dan Nigro, who did the Olivia Rodrigo record, to hear about the times when they felt disconnected, or they felt like nobody was hearing what they were doing. That is such a common piece of everyone's story, that we don't sit down and talk to anyone who says, you know what, I rolled out of bed one day, I started crushing it, and I continue to crush it to this day. There are just like all these periods of ups and downs. And it's funny, we got people, things like, well, what inspires you? And I wish I could remember who this was, but I said, what is it that really inspires you to write a song? And he said, a deadline. And I thought that's brilliant too, because it's not just sitting around waiting for lightning to strike, but hearing how they operate from a business standpoint, how they write when they're sometimes not inspired. There's so many stories about why the second record didn't do as well as the first record, and you hear the pain. It's sometimes 40 years later, and it's still like, that second record people should have bought that one. And you hear the passion, you hear the pain, you hear the ups and the downs. It's an incredibly human experience when you get a chance to talk to these people who seemed like giants, and then you realize that they literally are going through the same mental and emotional hurdles that all of us are through the whole process.
And not giving up. Like, that's such a cliche thing, but in those 7-year gaps, in those 6-year gaps, because we all have them. Like, at some point in our story, whether it's at the beginning when we're trying to get, they say it's a 10-year town, right? But even when you get that first cut, sometimes there's another desert season after that. So it's like, you're totally right. But it is those people who are willing to stick with it and just flat out not give up.
I'll tell you one of the things that I love that I've taken to heart is the idea that I hear from these writers about, they'll hear something in a conversation and just go write it down, because it's, the ideas are not always found in your quiet moment staring out the window, but they're in when somebody says something or you hear something on TV, and always having those antenna up. And we talked to Lamont Dozier, who was one of the great, Dozier Holland was one of the great songwriting teams of the great classic Motown era. And he told a story about being caught in a hotel room with someone who was not his girlfriend at the time. And girlfriend came and started beating on the door because she wanted, Lamont to emerge and account for himself. And he went to the door and she was yelling at him. He's like, slow down. Baby, stop. In the name of love, stop.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, hold on. And he shut the door and went to write it down, because that was how he wrote Stop in the Name of Love.
Wow.
Protect himself from his own girlfriend. But I mean, one of the most heated moments of his life, and he still had his antenna up to go, I just said a title.
Next time you're in a fight.
Oh my, yeah. It's a blessing and a curse. I do think sometimes I'll say something, or I will be in a fight, or I'll be doing something, and my wife will be like, are you writing a song? I'm like, no, I'm not writing a song. Hold on one second, I get my memo out. But no, that's good. I mean, some of the most painful moments in my life, I've gotten some of the coolest song titles out of. And I mean, I think that's the part that, you can take something really painful and horrible and turn it into something beautiful that people connect with and find healing from. And, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. If I pulled that with my wife, I would just get drop kicked to the head. So would not work so well in my relationship. But I definitely do write them down at night when I'm laying in bed, and all of that good. That's awesome. Cool. We're going to chat a few more minutes, and then we will open it up to some questions for those of you guys who are listening to this or watching this on replay. We are live with our Song Chasers group, and we are going to be opening up the floor here in a second via chat to ask any questions you want. Got Sam Tinnesz on here with me, Paul Duncan on here with me, the Riley Taylor, and yours truly. As we're rounding things out, I always love to ask this question of like, what would you say to the younger you who just got into the music industry? What piece of advice would you give yourself that you wish somebody would have given you about the industry before you got in? And either of you can take that.
Go, Sam.
I think for me, I wish that someone early on would have said something cliche like, enjoy the ride, enjoy the process. Because I think we live for those pinnacle mountaintop moments, but there's only a few of those. I mean, and even if you have a bunch of them, still the majority of the time is not mountaintop. It's the process of getting to that place. So if you don't enjoy the ride and the process and every day on your way to it, well, then you're cutting out big chunks of your life that, you might write off as not the big parts. But I think the process and hanging out with your friends and, writing a song and then having lunch and something so like pedestrian as like having lunch with your friends in the middle of a write and chatting about your life and maybe having an impact on each other in that moment. I think those are the kind of things that I look forward to now and I try to remind myself of. And I'm like, I'm not working a 9 to 5. When I was working a 9 to 5 so often, like just looking at the smaller blessings, what seems like smaller blessings now, but it's like, not living every day to be like, man, if I don't have a Grammy today, then it's, today's wasted,
Mm-hmm.
So I think just enjoying the process because it's a long process and it's not like McDonald's. It's not instant gratification. It's not a microwave. It is like a slow oven baked thing.
Slow cooker,
days and days and years.
Yeah.
It's not an Instapot, that's for sure.
No.
I would say something like that for sure as well. I think I would also say, I would like to tell my younger self to take advice. I was slow to take advice. That piece about, acknowledging your own individuality and the importance of what you have to say. I had a heavy dose of that as a young man. I definitely believed in that part. And there were times I think when people offered me help or said, what if we put you together with this writer? I didn't realize that was not a knock on my abilities to say that I needed co-writers to help me, that was actually an opportunity that was being offered me. And I wasn't open enough to those type of collaborative opportunities when I was really young. I really wanted to muscle it all on my own. And I think I made life harder and made the process longer for myself by trying to just shoulder everything on quote unquote talent alone. That I needed people more than I thought I did.
That's good.
Man, I would agree with that 100%. I think the one key metric that if you raise in your life that will have the biggest effect in the music industry is not always to like increase your resources, but it's often just to increase your humility.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can walk into a situation and know, okay, I've got something to learn from this person today, even if I'm quote further along than they are or whatever, or if I'm not, like, and they're telling me something, it's increasing that humility to be willing to, I'm confident, but I'm always learning. I've never arrived.
Yeah.
So before we get into some Q&A, I want to do a quick little lightning round with you guys. So whoever wants to answer first thing that pops in your mind, what is your favorite moment on your entire journey in the music industry? Favorite moment or story?
For me, it was, you mentioned Lauren Daigle. The first time I saw Lauren do one of my songs on stage was a real thrill for me because I hadn't seen my stuff performed live and see an audience reaction. I was so much in the writing room. So I got to go on tour with her and watch her sing our songs to an audience. It was really thrilling.
That's cool. Yeah, I think for me, like getting to the end of a really long stint of having a song out, probably 5 years or 6 years, and independently with no radio, no Spotify playlists, no placements, and that song finding its way to selling and streaming 500,000 streams and whatever worth of stuff, like to get a gold record. I got a gold record for a song called Play with Fire. Standing there with that moment, with that plaque in my hand and knowing how much work went into that moment was just really satisfying. And it was like, man, like we did this like by ourselves with no help, you know, and it was just very, very cool. And just reminded me that anything can happen, I guess, and not to like kind of look down on a moment when you release something and it doesn't just pop off instantly. You know, it's a long process, and just patience pays off.
Mm-hmm, for sure. We'll go a little more lighthearted here. Paul, favorite LA restaurant?
Oh, favorite LA restaurant would have to be Dino's Chicken on Pico.
All right. Favorite Nashville restaurant?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but I would say my favorite pizza restaurant here is Desano's. It's so good.
I've never been there.
Y'all gotta go. It's so good.
Where is it?
It's over like off of like Music Row, but around, it's like, here's the Music Row circle, like the Naked People circle, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And off to the left. It's off to the left. It's like they bring in dough from Italy and like water from New York, like really weird stuff, and they put it all together.
Water from New York.
Yes, because it makes the pizza taste different.
Wow.
So,
man,
you know,
this is a lame question, but do they have gluten-free?
They probably do. I'm sure they do.
Surely.
That's probably like an insult to their.
If they bring in water from New York, they can probably make you a gluten-free crust.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's right.
Okay, last question. Favorite song that you've ever written?
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Oh gosh. Let me think.
Man.
I mean, I'm kind of a psycho. I always like, my favorite song is always the last song I just wrote. So I'm always the newest shiniest toy is my favorite. So I mean, some of the new stuff that I'm writing for my new record is I'm really excited about. I have a song coming out with this artist named Dashboard Confessional that I wrote with Seth, and that's one of my favorite ones right now. So I'll just say that.
Yeah.
There's a song that I wrote with a guy named Blessing Offer. Seth, I think you and I wrote with Blessing, I think. And there's a song that we wrote called Don't Miss Love for How It's Dressed, about how love comes into your life. Sometimes it looks like pain. Sometimes it looks like, a desert, whatever, but don't miss it just because it's not wearing the thing you expected it to wear. He hasn't put it out. I don't know that he intends to put it out. I've just got the demo, but I love it. I just love that song, and more than some of the songs I've done that have done much bigger things. I love that one.
Well, I love that your answer wasn't like the biggest gold record that you've ever had too.
No, I feel like I end up hating the songs that do amazing. By the time it's over, I'm like, oh, I hate Legends Are Made. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Honestly, some of the stuff that I have to do to a song to get it to that point carves away so many of the things that I loved about it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
man, I want to dig into that for a second. What do you mean by that? Can you speak a little more into that process?
Well, I mean, it's like, Pink Floyd and Randy Travis. I mean, what more? I like the weird two great tastes that may not taste great together. I tend to like the weird expressions. I like the turn of phrase. I like things that make me kind of stop and think. And sometimes, when you're trying to reach a broad audience.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Made It in Music podcast. In addition to this episode, we also recorded a Q&A session where some of the songwriters in our Song Chasers community were able to ask their own questions. We'll release that episode shortly after this one. Make sure to check out other episodes of the Made It in Music podcast. We have well over 100 interviews with some of the top music industry pros, many here in Nashville and many from all over the world. Subscribe to make sure that you automatically get future episodes, and leave us a review if you loved it. It would really help us out. Or send an email to support@fullcirclemusic.com if you have ideas for how we can improve the show. If you would like to become a Song Chasers member and attend these training sessions live, head over to joinsongchasers.com to learn more. You also get additional exclusive trainings from Seth Mosley, you get our Track Suite Pro software, you get song reviews from me and my team, and you get access to a custom social media network we created exclusively for songwriters and musicians. There's nothing else like it on the internet. Go to joinsongchasers.com to learn how to join, and check out madeitinmusic.com for more content and episodes from this podcast. See you in the next episode.